both. I'm Hope. I'm from Picture House Cinemas, a chain of cinemas here in the UK, and we are so excited to be bringing Nosferatu to our screens. I have a little something for you. Nosferatu is actually the cover girl of our latest issue of our in-house magazine.
Oh, this is great.
So this will be
Thank
in
you.
all of our cinemas come
That's great.
this week,
Super cool.
hot off the press, so you're very welcome.
Thank you.
It's so exciting to be talking to you both today, both about this film and because both The Lighthouse and 2005's Rent are very precious to me.
Oh, thank you.
Personally. So as well as talking about this film, it's just really personally very exciting. So thank
excellent.
you for being here. Robert, it's been a long time coming, right?
Indeed.
I think I read about how Max Schreck's Count Orlok was like this really kind of formative horror figure for you. You kind of encountered him quite early, and I guess, you know, he's so striking with that makeup and that, you know, the iconic stills from the film. I guess, how did that manifest in what we're here for now? Tell me about that journey.
Yeah, I mean, I saw it when I was 9, and it has stuck with me ever since. And I think, you know, beyond Shrek and the atmosphere of the movie, one of the great things about the original film is that Murnau and his collaborators turned the Stoker novel into like a very simple fairy tale. And I think had I tried to adapt, you know, Dracula, I would be stuck with a whole lot of things that I didn't want to be stuck with. And Nosferatu was something that enabled me to have like a lot more freedom. And in trying to understand why it was important to tell this story again, it was really inspiring to like reconsider the fact that Murnau and Galeen call Ellen's character a somnambulist, and a sleepwalker in the 19th century was someone who was like in touch with the other realm. And so, you know, I realized that if Ellen's the central protagonist of the story, if Lily Rose Depp's character is, if we're seeing it through her eyes, then we have the potential to make something that's more emotionally grounded and more psychologically rich. And so that was very exciting.
The stench of their bodies was horrible. Standing before me was death. But I'd never been so happy.
And Chris, obviously you've worked with Robert before on The Lighthouse and The Witch. What was it about this project in particular that spoke to you?
Well, I think this one was all-consuming, in a sense, in terms of The Lighthouse and The Witch. We were executive producers. And I felt, I didn't have the opportunity to go to the set of The Witch, but we visited the set of The Lighthouse for a couple of days, and I really felt a sense of distance, like I really want to be part of this. I want to be closer to and the fact that we've been developing Nosferatu for 10 years, it just became obvious that I wanted to put the sort of the writing and directing side of my career on hold and actually go to, and Rob was the one who I said to Rob, do you want me to just be there for a couple of weeks? And he said, no, I want you to be there all the time and actively produce the movie. And that was a little scary at first, but at the same time, you know, Eleanor and I moved to Prague and we were on set every day, and it became this incredibly inspirational sort of production situation where I've said it a few times, I've learned a lot. And I think the problem with a lot of directors my age is we tend to get, you don't want to say rest on your laurels, but you start to get, and old guys always are like this. They get the tunnel
Much
vision.
like Nosferatu.
Like Nosferatu.
Like
But you do have this sense of tunnel vision where you start to not listen to people and you start to not, you know, I've seen it with a lot of my contemporaries. There are guys like, just listen to me, I will tell you how to do things. But the fact that I walked away from this movie having learned so much from the way Rob directs, which is obviously completely different than what I do, was just inspirational. And it's something you bring onto your next project, whatever it is. And I'll be forever thankful for that, you know.
Great, that's really lovely. You touched on this just briefly, Robert, but the film places Lily Rose's Ellen kind of at the centre of the story, more so than previous iterations that we've seen on screen. And I guess feels like it becomes a story about her self-determination and kind of what she makes of the darkness within her, as much as it is about the mythology of the story, which does feel true to, you know, you as a filmmaker. Why, I guess, was this the way into the story for you? What was it about this character?
Yeah, I mean, I think I did sort of touch on it earlier, but you know, the other thing that was nice about it was that because Ellen emerges as the heroine in the Murnau film, I was also able to do my own thing with it while keeping it true to the movements of the Murnau, Galeen, Nosferatu. And I think what's another thing that's interesting about the character is, like, she does have a lot of agency, but she doesn't. It's still told through the mores of the 19th century. She's not like putting her husband's trousers on, jumping on the horse, and saving the day, like, by staking the vampire. I think it's hopefully compelling and scary to see how she's constricted by the period. And she's a victim of 19th century society, not just the vampire. And to see how much strength she has to push against that and become herself, and overcome her shame to, like, embrace who she is, like, within the context of the 19th century, to me was interesting to explore.
This creature is a force more powerful than evil. Its desire is to consume all life on Earth.
Moving from, I guess, the feminine to the extreme masculine of this story, Bill Skarsgård's transformation as Count Orlok was pretty spectacular. And I guess hearing him before we ever see him really helps kind of build up to that moment when he finally, meets the light of day. And I think that withholding and horror is so important in terms of, you don't just want to shove a monster right in your face.
Yeah.
That has its purpose, but not for this story.
Yeah.
I guess I'd love to hear from you both about how you worked with Bill to create this kind of spectre.
Basically, in trying to understand what this vampire would be, I wanted to go back to the folklore, to a time when people actually believed that vampires were real, because that was going to be potentially the most scary way to approach a vampire. And these early folkloric vampires were corpses, they're not creatures, they're not suave, like, pale guys in dinner jackets. They are just like dead people, undead people, So then the question is, of course, like, what did a dead Transylvanian nobleman look like? And that informs the clothing and the hairstyles and the whole thing. And and then I also, as you kind of alluded to, I want him to be this very, like, ultra phallic character, and there was, like, a lot of like Soviet movies with these Balkan villains with these super low, intimidating voices, and I was like, that's what Orlok needs to sound like. So Bill, worked with an opera singer on training his voice to, like, come down an octave, and having a lot of strength, and that voice you hear is Bill. It's not digitally altered. It's a tremendous performance, and it takes these prosthetics and for him to become Orlok and to lose himself in it, but he does.
He does.
Oh yeah.
Obviously, you had Willem on board, who himself embodied Max Schreck's Count Orlok in Shadow of the Vampire. Did he have any sage advice to import on Bill or you?
Willem likes to stay in his own lane.
Sure, I can imagine that.
Yeah.
Great. Obviously, the visual language of this film is pretty striking, and I think the thing that took my breath away the most was the way you played with light and shadow. You created this really tangible sense of phantasmagoria, which is so crucial for a story like this, and really harkens back to Gothic horror of days past. Obviously, you worked with your regular cinematographer, Jaron Blaschke, again on this project, who's no stranger to experimenting with these textures and cameras and vintage lenses. Could you both talk about how you nailed this, like, really shadowy look and feel for the film?
I mean, there's, like, tons of references, but, and obviously it's a polished look with a lot of texture, but, Jaron's always thinking about what would the actual light source be, So there's lots of actual using candlelight, and, perhaps while it may seem extreme, trying to get light from very far away, or using mirrors to reflect light to create, the kind of distance that would look more like a more naturalistic moonlight in a room or whatever. But we meticulously design all the shots, and we work with a storyboard artist on all these shots, But I was incredibly fortunate, to have Chris Columbus on set, who's one of the masters of orthodox Hollywood storytelling, who would be an antidote to me and Jaron's arty-farty tendencies, and would say, like, was so carefully combing over the storyboards to say, like, where's this beat? where's this really important story beat? I don't see it articulated visually. Or like, guys, we're using Hunejawara Castle, which you told me was Stoker's inspiration for Castle Dracula, and it's in Transylvania, and you guys are barely shooting the exterior. Like, really reconsider how you're shooting this thing. Like, you need to use it, you know, and all of that kind of guidance from Chris was made the film what it is.
Oh, thanks. It was fun, but I mean, it really was, because it was getting into a completely different situation of how to make a film, which I loved, because I tend to storyboard a little bit, but particularly action sequences, but not to the level of what was happening here. By the time we got to the set, we sort of knew exactly what every scene was going to look like and feel like, which was a wonderful situation.
But and Chris knows, like, he wants to make. He doesn't want me to make a Chris Columbus movie. He wants me to make the best Robert Eggers movie, you know, and that was awesome. And I think the fact that we're such different filmmakers is part of why our collaboration is so strong. Like, you know, like one of the things I love is the Venn diagrams of interest with my collaborators. Like, obviously you need a lot of overlap to make it work, but the things that don't overlap can often be the things that like can really push yourself like creatively beyond what you thought you could do.
Great. I would like to see that Venn diagram. I feel like there'll be so many circles for this film.
Yes.
There is a devil in this world, and I have met him.
But you could never please me as he could.
Lastly, I had the pleasure of talking with Willem a few months ago in a similar situation to this, and he told me a really lovely story about the first time he saw one of your films, Robert. He said he was walking down the street and the poster for The Witch caught his eye, and he just thought, that's a great poster. I'm just going to go in and watch this film with no expectations, and just had this really beautiful experience. And obviously, as a cinema company, and just me personally, I'm really passionate about what the cinema experience can be as like a sort of extension of the psyche, which for a film like this feels like it really, really is. So I'd love to hear from you both why audiences should spend some time with Nosferatu in the cinema.
First of all, the film, the picture was shot on film.
Exactly.
Which just adds to this rich, deep texture. So that's one of the reasons I think it needs to be
We will
seen.
be showing it on 35 at Picture House Central. which
You
we're
are
very
showing it on
excited about.
35?
Yeah.
Fantastic.
It's going to be great.
Nice.
That was a specific fight of ours. We wanted to make sure, since we're shooting it on 35, people see it on 35. Also, I think that no matter how great of a system, entertainment system you have at home, nothing can capture being in an audience and being sort of immediately the film based on. So when I first saw the film, Rob's visuals and the beauty of the film was obvious, but I didn't hear the sound design. I didn't hear the score. So I saw basically what I felt was half of the film, and I didn't know that at the time, and then suddenly, after the first mix and the intense amount of sound work Rob did, who I can only, and I don't want to embarrass you, compare to someone like Stanley Kubrick, maybe Robert Altman, who did spend that much time on sound, suddenly you're enveloped in the movie. So you need to see it in a theater, because from okay, we all know when you see that title, Nosferatu, you're in the hands of a very accomplished filmmaker who's essentially extending his hand and pulling you into the screen. And that
Again,
won't
much
happen.
like Count Orlok.
Yeah, and that's not going to happen if you're at home opening your beer and looking for your popcorn. Oh, this is the beginning. I can miss that. You have to be in the theater to see this. And then you can't leave. We were watching the preview the other night, and literally, people are running out of the theater to use whatever they were doing, and they were coming back within seconds because they didn't want to miss anything. So that's why you have to see it in the theater.
Wow.
Yeah.
How do you follow that, Robert?
I can't.
Amazing. Come and see Nosferatu?
Yeah,
That's
please.
the message?
Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much
Thank
both for your
you.
time,
Thank
and
you.
thank you for this film. I love it so much.
That's
I
great.
want my
Thank you.
audiences to too.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm ready.
Thank you for watching Picture House Cinema's unique video content. Hit the subscribe button to be kept up to date with our movie news, cast and crew interviews, highlights, trailers, and lots more.